Good morning. So back when I had this still sitting on the original chassis, um, I was trying to figure out how to get it up in the air, and I knew I was going to put it onto this wood dolly that I was going to kind of build under it once I had it up in the air. And so I used those 4x4s across the span and grabbed the two middle, the ones close to me and the middle one. And at that point, I had already pulled the front end off the chassis. And when I lifted it up, it wanted to tip back because the back of the car is just so enormously heavy with all the sheet metal back there. Not the extra stuff in there, but just the weight of the car and with the front with the front end missing, the fenders and the hood missing off of it. It just was ass heavy. So then I put in the board in the back and the 4x4 across there, and then just picked it up where it was convenient with the lift arms. And the lift arms did not reach front to rear on those cross member 4x4s, so that long one spanning all three worked fine. So then it allowed me to position it where I kind of wanted to and then just pick it up. So I thought that's how I was going to work on it with the repair, and I got those 4x4s under, in the first two closest to us are under actual body mounts. The last one is under part of a body mount, but so much sheet metal that's flat that it holds it pretty steadily. So I've had it up here, and I've been figuring out how I want to support it while I do the rockers, if you will, sit inboard of the door, and they are what hold the front dash and firewall together. And in the middle of the whole thing, I decided to put the front end back on because, one, I just wanted to see what it looked like again, and also start trying to figure out how I was going to drop it onto the frame, realizing that having the front end on would give me all the information as to what needs to get cut out and possible ways to connect it in everything. So that was that went back on that way. So fast forward. So I realized that I need to support the car, so I welded in these brackets a couple days ago, and gave myself a lot of rigidity so that when I do cut out this kind of rectangular, semi-curved, semi-bent rocker that holds the front to the rear, that would give me some stability. But where I had the car resting was going to present problems with, once I start cutting that out, the car wouldn't be resting on anything. So what I stumbled into is I'm going to put a bar or a rod across these two brackets. I'm going to first cut, I've got it supported enough so I can cut out the floor. I'm going to put a couple of stands in there and support it so that I don't have to hold it on this front or even this middle one. And then all the weight will be carried by the welded in bracket onto the stands and the rear, which will take away its mobility for the moment, because I'm not going to integrate any wheels into the front stands. It's going to be easier just to prop it up right where it is, and then do both rockers, get the front reattached to the back, leave in the structure, and then set it back down on the wood dolly wherever I want, which means I can set it into the middle of the new rockers, because they're going to be I'm using a 4x2 tubing, square tubing, for that. So that's my plan. I'm going to start cutting floors out and setting stands up, and I'll check back. But that's kind of the process. That it seems like I don't think I'm going backwards, because I think this dolly is still a good idea, and clamps and screws all move, so I can change how this car ultimately lands back on the car lift for the up and down that it's going to take a few hundred times to figure out how to get the frame to fit on it. The one other thing I'll point out is, while I'm in there, the rocker arm and the body narrows quite a bit. It starts at a nice width for where you would sit, and then the front gets quite a bit narrower. Obviously the body can't be changed that way, but the way that the rockers, if you will, if you look there, you will see that they kind of swoop up and in, and I don't need them to do that with this new frame. That frame there certainly has to follow the contour of the door so the doors still function, but that point can arc back outward to a wider width by getting rid of some of the structure on the firewall. And again, all that will be very easy to do once it's supported out of the way, and I can just hack and weld. So that's the goal, and we'll follow up with more as the morning progresses. Fast forward to a few minutes later, and deciding how I was going to cut that out, I was thinking a Sawzall would just rip through it much easier. I have a pneumatic air saw and thought that would be handy too, but just I had plenty of wide open room, so I just grabbed a Sawzall. But my God, was that violent! Just shook and rattled the whole thing. Yeah, there we go. So that's off. Now it's time to put the stands in and support it, and then start taking wood frame away. Okay, so here's the next step. I've got the floor cut out. I've got the stands in, supported there, and so the entire car is being held up by those two stands and all the way in the rear. And my reasoning here, or my next step here, is going to be to get inside there and cut out the floor up to the beginning. Oh, there we go. Up to the beginning of that hump, where that cross brace is sitting in at the top. I've looked at everything closely. All of that on that back seat area is pretty much surface rust. It is surface rust. There's no rust throughs. The rust throughs were all down on this lower floor and down in these wells that were just poorly thought through as far as water drainage. Anyway, so that's the next step. And then after that, it will be cut one of these existing rockers and see what kind of flex I get. I am convinced that this rectangular tubing that I've got on the lower part of the A-pillar, really the firewall, going to the door jamb will keep the car from wanting to bend in that rocker's absence. And I'm going to make the cut from out here so I can actually see what happens, but I'm fairly convinced it's not going to move based on the bracing I have in there. But we'll see. The sheet metal on this car is just stupid thick, and I've got that lower part of the B pillar into the side, all one continuous piece of sheet metal that's not rusted through anywhere except for the very, very bottom. And then it's got the fender bolted onto it, and then all of that goes back into the sheet metal of the pan, which is thick, and then being supported there. So I really don't think it's going to tweak, but I sure am not making that cut inside there. I'm going to make the cut from out here. And then I left this support there in case something is horribly wrong. At least it only bends a few inches, but I really don't think it's going to with the stuff I have in there. I'm just like being overcautious and haven't done this enough to say for sure. So anyway, okay, so next up, cut the floor out. I'll get back, and then we'll cut the side, and I'll set up a camera so we can do that live and see the disaster real time. So here's the floor fully cut out, and it went to plan, and that is the piece that we're going to be replacing on both sides, which holds the front to the rear. And the car is overall quite a bit wider than the S10 frame, so I don't think it'll be a problem figuring out how to do mounts. That'll be pretty straightforward. And I'll probably end up sitting on the frame floor and just putting that level with whatever this rocker is, so the floor's as low as it can be. So yeah, cut it out that way, and then just enormous amounts of rust on the flat parts. After about 2-3 inches up, it pretty much goes away, other than just surface rust. So should be easy enough to patch in. Next thing we're going to do is cut one of these rails and see if it opens up at all, and see if I've got the thing supported. Okay, that was interesting. That little puppy closed right up. Didn't quite grab the blade. So not bad. Okay, look at that. That is, that's interesting. So that closed the kerf of the blade, and it was a thinner blade. I think what I'm going to do is take out another section right next to it and see if it keeps closing, because right now I think that's just the tension now getting added to my welded in supports. Let's see what happens when I go with another 1/8 of an inch or so, or whatever it falls into. Cool. All right. Guess I'll be playing with the sound settings on that. That's really good news. So this thing just took a little tension with the first kerf cut, and then everything else stayed exactly in the same spot. So that's encouraging. Cool. I'm on the right track. Now here's a real question. Do I dare do both sides at the same time, or do I repair this side and then do the other side? Yeah, I think I'm going to do that. So I'm going to cut this out, and we'll get back to you. Okay, a couple hours later, I'm standing where the back seat was, and the rocker on the passenger side is fully out, and I've cut away the rust that was absolutely a problem, and everything else that's in there I've touched with the grinder a little bit to see if it's clean, if I can clean it up, which I can. So that is what I'm working with. And on the front, I took away the narrow section and hacked away at some of the firewall and the footwell. It narrows quite a bit where that is cut, and so I went ahead and widened it out because I'm going to be doing so much surgery on the firewall anyway. It seemed like, hey, let's just get that that 4x2 tube in there as far up as I can for now. I can hack it off, but once I have the tube welded on representing the rocker, then I'll be able to get rid of this stand that's right in the middle, and then I'll be able to move this thing around the way I want to, put it on the car lift, and then up and down. I'm doing one side at a time just because it's completely handy to have this side here so I can make some measurement references, like off those hinge holes and off some of the latch on the side, just to make sure I locate it correctly. It's not a big deal. The door closes against this piece, not on top of it, so the gap isn't really a thing. But I still like to have it be kind of consistent. I'm certainly not doing a restoration, but I want to make it strong, or stronger than it was, and certainly set up better drainage planes. This mess in here was solid dirt and just held water, and so I'm not going to fill it exactly, but I'll certainly make it where if water gets in it, it drains out a lot more aggressively than the way the factory did in 1941. So there we are.